Thanks, Karen. So this is the first document, and sorry that the text is a little bit small. When you get it in a PDF, it'll be more legible. This is the document that is some guidance around how to count cases. And so we have an overview section that tells you unless a case falls into one of these 4 categories, the case counts as 1. So vast majority of cases will count as 1. The first table that you see, open case count amount by case type and case stage, breaks out the different kinds of cases that we have by the case type drop-down menu items, and what the potential case counts would be in the pretrial / pre-adjudication stage, and then also post-disposition, because you'll see for delinquency cases, the case count changes depending on the case stage. The dependency cases don't change, and then for TPR purposes, we're considering the TPR case just to be in like the pre-adjudication stage. So there's just like 1 case count in 1 stage for TPR cases. So this is how you will count your cases unless the case is complex or there's some additional like circumstance or complicating factor to the case. So the second table shows you the different circumstances in which you would count a case differently than the first table shows. And so that's in delinquency post-disposition representation cases. So we list the breakdown of how you would decide to count your case in that situation. For dependency, the case count differs depending on if you're representing multiple children or a parent. And then there's also some additional information on what to do in the instance that there's a new petition filed on an existing case. TPR, there's some differences in how you would count for a parent versus multiple children. And then we have some more information on complex cases, what the different complex case types are, and how you would count those. So it's just an overview of the case counting document. This one is the second document that gives some guidance on how to use the drop-down menu items in the status of youth / child placement column in the open cases report. And so one additional change that we're making that I don't think Karen referenced is that for the status of youth / child placement variable, we're going to ask that it just needs to be completed when you're representing a child or a youth client rather than a parent client. So hopefully that will make things a little bit more straightforward. So you're going to select the drop-down option that best describes the child's status or placement at the end of the month. We realize that this can change through the month, so you'll just report as of the last day of the month. And then in the chart that's called Status of Youth / Child Placement drop-down options and descriptions, you'll see that we break this down by case type and then also by case stage, because some of the drop-down items are really only applicable to pretrial cases or post-disposition cases or just delinquency cases. So dependency and TPR are lumped together. You'll just have to look for the relevant item for those cases. And so if you can look at the bottom row in each of those sections, you'll see that there is an option for other. And other should only be selected if no other option is appropriate for where the child or the youth is or their status. And then when you select other, we'll ask that you enter the actual status or placement in the comment section. If you didn't select other, then you don't need to enter anything in the comment section. But you'll see that we have a few more delinquency specific options. So we're hoping that will make things easier for you guys. Okay, so this is, I think, like the general open case report guidance document. So it gives a pretty brief overview of how to use that specific report. So you'll see that the top table is showing you all of the columns in the open cases report except for the comments column, because comments are just comments and we didn't think we needed to explain to you guys on how to use that one. But you'll see there's the name of the column, and then underneath it is the format that we would like you to put the data in. So when it says one case number only, that's because we can only have one case number in each little cell. Again, like Karen said, if there are multiple siblings, then you can enter them in different rows rather than putting all of their case numbers in the same little cell in the same row. Where we indicate that there's drop-down options only, that's because if there's a drop-down menu, we would only want to use those options. And then for the date variables, we need you to enter it in that format with the slash. That helps us a lot. So then the notes section is just kind of like the biggest takeaways on how to use the columns and the drop-down items too. So you'll see that like in PCRP case count, there's like just a general sentence that says for additional guidance, see case counting guidance. So that's going to tell you essentially go back to the case counting document that we already reviewed. Okay, so below the table you see we've listed all of the drop-down menu columns and the different items in the drop-down menus. So hopefully that's clear. And then at the bottom we have some notes around like kind of more complicated data entry issues. So when you have a client with multiple dependency petitions, if it's a pre-petition case or if there's multiple siblings on the same petition, we thought you guys would want more guidance on how to use the open cases report. So we've put it there. You guys can see that there's again another like link back to the case counting guidance, because in the case counting guidance we have information on how to count multiple dependency petitions. So we're hoping that within the 6 pages you'll be able to link to where you need to be looking. And then this, can you go back one, Karen? So this is the general guidance for using the activity report. Looks a lot like the open cases general guidance. So again, we have a table with all of the columns, their names, the format that we'd like you to enter the data in, and then some general notes on how to use it. We have the drop-down menu items, and then additional information on what to do if you have multiple siblings on the same petition, or if there are multiple court outcomes, how to treat those. So Karen has already stated what we would do in those situations, but we want to let you guys have it in writing. Okay, so this is the last section. It's 2 pages. We tried to get it onto one, but just couldn't, so sorry about that. Essentially, we know from the questions you guys have and from looking at your guys' reports that the activities, the court activity outcomes, and then the dismissal reasons have been challenging in knowing when to use which item. And so what we did is we laid out all of the different items and gave you a description or a definition as best we could. So you'll see in this section we have the activities, and we don't have a ton of variation for between case types for how you will use the different activity drop-downs. So they're just all here, and they should be applicable to all of the case types except for CRB, I think is just for dependency. So you'll see there's definition, and then on the next page we have the descriptions for the court activity outcomes and the dismissal reasons. So this is a little bit more complicated than the activities because some of the drop-down items in the outcomes section are just for certain case types. So we can look at the top section, which is delinquency. It's a little cut off, but that says delinquency. And so in the last 4 drop-down items for delinquency, commitment, probation, alternative disposition, and suppression are specific to delinquency. You wouldn't be using those in a dependency or a TPR case. So we have them listed there. And then some of those drop-down menu items are specific to a certain case stage. So some of them are pretrial and some of them are dispositions. So we tried to indicate that for you also. For TPR, you'll see that we have rights terminated and relinquishment there, and that's really specific to TPR. So you won't see those items listed under delinquency or dependency. So we have the outcomes in the first section, and then in the second section to the right, we have the dismissal reasons. And so for every time you select dismissed as the court activity outcome, we'll ask you to select a dismissal reason. And again, some of the dismissal reasons are specific to a certain case type. In the delinquency section, you'll see that we have a dismissal reason that's called unfit to proceed. And that's really specific to delinquency, so you wouldn't use that in the other case types, so it's just found under the delinquency section. And so we tried to list out everything in clear, concise ways that are also distinct from all the other options so that there's not going to be overlap between 2 of the drop-down menu items, so you won't have to spend time thinking about like, oh, which one should I choose? It should be pretty straightforward. And so that is the end of